The first time I realized I was in trouble was when my boss looked up from her laptop and said my name like it meant something. Jared? Just one word, calm, sharp. The kind of voice that could stop a room without even trying. I was standing in the conference room doorway holding a stack of printouts, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. Alyssa Hart was my boss, 41, divorced, always in control. She ran our small media company like she built it with her bare hands, even though I knew she didn't. Still, she carried that place on her shoulders like it was hers alone. Blazers, clean heels, hair pulled back, eyes that missed nothing. She didn't do small talk unless it had a purpose. She didn't laugh loud. She didn't flirt. She didn't need anyone. And somehow, for months, I'd been noticing her. Not in a creepy way. Not like those guys in the office who whispered when she walked by. It was the little things. The way she stayed late, alone, when everyone else ran out the door. The way she softened for half a second when she thanked me for fixing something at the last minute. The way she listened when I cracked a dumb joke in a meeting, like she was trying not to smile. I told myself it was nothing. Then Travis dared me. It was a Tuesday in the break room, the kind of dull afternoon that makes you feel like you're melting into the office carpet. Travis and I were eating sandwiches at the wobbly table. He was chewing on some vegan thing that looked like it hated him. Alyssa walked past the open door, folder in hand, heels clicking, eyes forward like she was on a mission. I didn't even realize I'd watched her until Travis elbowed me. "Man," he said, grinning, "you look like you just saw a movie star." I snorted and shoved a napkin at him. "Shut up." "Oh, it's like that," he said. "You got a crush on the boss." "I do not." Travis leaned back, satisfied like he'd found his favorite toy. "Bet you won't ask her out." I laughed. Loud. Too loud. Ask Alyssa out? She'd fire me before I finished the sentence. $1,000, he said, like he was ordering coffee. "You ask her to dinner. If you do it, I pay you. If you chicken out, you pay me." Quote, "You don't even have $1,000. "I'll Venmo you," he said. "I got savings." "You have negative savings." He held out his hand anyway. And because I'm stupid, and because my whole life I've been the guy who jokes to avoid feeling things, I shook his hand. It was supposed to be funny. But later that night, alone in my one-bedroom apartment with my TV playing some show I wasn't watching, the dare didn't feel like a joke anymore. My couch sagged in the middle like it had given up on life. My coffee maker made a noise like it was dying. I had my sketchbook open on the table, a half-finished doodle of a dog in a suit, and my pen just hovered over the page. Because all I could think about was her. It made no sense. Alyssa and me were from different planets. She was a polished, private, high-level boss. I was the guy who kept the printer alive and made social posts that got 10 likes if we were lucky. I was laid back. She was a storm, but the idea of asking her out stuck in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. What if she said no? What if she said yes? The second thought scared me more. By Thursday, I was acting like an idiot. I'd catch her in meetings, and instead of listening to the client pitch, I'd be wondering what her life looked like when she went home. Did she eat dinner alone? Did she keep a plant alive? Did she have a favorite movie? Did she ever relax? Travis kept texting me nonsense. A picture of a chicken with the words "you" under it. A meme of a guy sweating with the caption, "When you have to ask your boss out." I ignored him, but it didn't help. The dare had turned into a challenge I couldn't unsee. Friday night came, and the office emptied out like it always did. People grabbed bags, yelled goodbye, promised drinks, disappeared into the Dallas evening. I stayed. Not because I was a hero. Because I was terrified, and if I left, I'd talk myself out of it forever. At around 7 o'clock, the place was quiet enough to hear the air conditioner kick on. I walked past rows of empty desks and glowing monitors, my footsteps too loud on the tile. Alyssa was still in the conference room. The door was cracked open. I could see her sitting there alone, laptop open, a notepad beside her, hair still pulled back, sleeves rolled to her elbows like she'd been at war with deadlines all day. I stood outside the door for a full 10 seconds, just breathing. This was insane. I could lose my job. I could embarrass myself. I could ruin the one thing in my life that felt steady. But I thought about my routine. Wake up, traffic, emails, jokes, sleep, repeat. I thought about how safe it was and how empty it felt sometimes. Like I was living on mute. I knocked. Her eyes lifted immediately, like she expected me. Yes, Jared. I stepped in, holding nothing, because I didn't have an excuse anymore. My hands were in my pockets so she wouldn't see them shaking. Hey, I said. My voice came out rough. You got a second? She closed her laptop halfway, not all the way, like she was giving me time but keeping control. Go ahead. My throat went dry. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I know this is out of nowhere, I said. And if you tell me to pretend this never happened, I will. Quote. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Okay, I swallowed. Would you maybe want to get dinner with me sometime? The silence that followed felt like a drop in an elevator. Alyssa stared at me, not confused, not angry. Just still, like she was reading a page I didn't know I'd written. I braced for a lecture, a reminder of boundaries, HR. My name said in that cold tone. Instead, her lips lifted, just barely, and then she said it, quiet and steady, like she'd been holding it in. I've been waiting for you to say that. My chest went tight. I stared at her, sure I misheard. What? Alyssa leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving mine. I said yes, Jared. She paused, then added, softer, but only if you understand something. I nodded, because I couldn't do anything else. This stays outside the office, she said. No one knows. Not your friends. Not mine. Not a single person in that building. The way she said it wasn't just boss talk. It was a warning, and something else too. Something fragile behind it, like she was risking more than I was. I forced air into my lungs. Okay, I said. I understand. She watched me for another beat, then she stood, picking up her bag like the conversation hadn't just flipped my whole life upside down. There's a cafe on Elm Street, she said, walking past me. The Rusty Spoon. Tomorrow, 7:30. She stopped at the door, glanced back, and for the first time her voice didn't sound like my boss. Don't be late. Then she was gone, and I was left in that quiet conference room, staring at the empty chair where she'd been, realizing the dare was over. But the real trouble was just starting. Saturday dragged like a bad song stuck on repeat. I cleaned my apartment twice, even though it was still a one-bedroom with a tired couch and a view of a parking lot. I stood in front of my closet like it was a crime scene, holding up shirts and arguing with myself. Too casual, she'll think you don't care. Too fancy, you'll look like you're trying too hard. By 6:45, I settled on a dark blue button-down and jeans. Safe, simple, not a guy trying to impress his boss, just a guy going to dinner with a woman he couldn't stop thinking about. That last part still didn't feel real. I got to the Rusty Spoon at 7:20 because I'd rather sit in my car and panic than walk in late. The place was warm, all brick walls and soft lights, the kind of cafe that made you forget you were in Dallas for a second. It smelled like roasted coffee and fresh bread, and there was quiet jazz playing, like someone had planned the whole mood on purpose. My hands were sweaty anyway. I picked a table near the back, where we wouldn't be in the middle of everyone's view, and I kept checking the door like an idiot. Then it chimed. Alyssa walked in, and the air changed. She wasn't wearing a blazer, no pencil skirt, no sharp work armor. She had on a white blouse with the sleeves rolled up and jeans, and her hair was down, dark and smooth around her shoulders. She looked younger somehow, not because she was trying to, but because she didn't have to hold up the office anymore. She scanned the room, and her eyes landed on me right away. My stomach flipped. She walked over like she wasn't nervous at all, like this was normal, like she didn't have the power to ruin my life with one sentence if she wanted to. You're early, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. Couldn't risk being late, I said, trying to sound calm. You said don't be late. Alyssa's mouth twitched like she was fighting a smile. Good. For a second, we just looked at each other, not in a dramatic movie way. More like we were both thinking the same thing, and neither of us wanted to say it out loud. This is real, The waiter came over and she ordered a glass of white wine. I ordered a beer because I needed something in my hands. We started with safe talk. The traffic. The food. How the office coffee machine was basically motor oil in disguise. That part felt easy, because I was used to talking. I could always talk. It was my thing. But Alyssa wasn't just listening politely. She was actually there with me, eyes steady, posture relaxed, like she'd stepped into a version of herself I'd never met. And that made me nervous all over again. "So," she said, tilting her head, "tell me the truth. Why did you ask me?" My throat tightened. "Because I wanted to." Her eyes stayed on mine. "That's not an answer." I exhaled slowly, trying not to let my voice shake. "Okay, because I've noticed you for a long time." She didn't blink. "Noticed me how?" I swallowed. "Like you're always the last one in the office. Like you carry everything. Like you don't let anyone get close." Alyssa's expression didn't break, but something in her eyes shifted, like I'd touched a spot she kept covered. "That's what you see?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "And I guess I started wondering what you're like when you're not being Alyssa Hart, the boss." Her fingers wrapped around her wine glass, slow and thoughtful. "You think I'm someone else outside the office?" "I think you're still you," I said. "Just less guarded." For a second, her gaze dropped to the table, then back up. Her voice got quieter, not softer, just more honest. "I don't let people in easily." "I noticed," I said, and that made her laugh. A real laugh. It wasn't loud, but it was warm, and it hit me straight in the chest because it didn't sound like something she would ever do in a meeting. "Okay," she said, still smiling. "Then here's my truth." I leaned forward without meaning to. "I've noticed you too," Alyssa said. My brain stalled. "Me?" "Yes," she said, like it was obvious. "You're always making everyone laugh. You act like you don't care, but you do. You fix things before people even ask. And you're one of the only people in that building who speaks to me like I'm a person." My mouth went dry. "I do?" "You do," she said. "Even when you're nervous. Especially when you're nervous." I stared at her, and the room around us felt far away. The waiter came back with food, saving me from saying something stupid. We ate. We talked more. She asked about my sketchbook, the one she'd seen once in a meeting when I'd been doodling instead of taking notes. "You draw all the time," she said. "Why?" I shrugged, picking at my fries. "It's just what I do, helps me stay calm. I draw dumb cartoons, dogs, coffee cups, people who look like they're dying inside during meetings." Alyssa smirked. "That last one sounds familiar." "Everyone in that office looks like that at least once a day," I said. She shook her head like she was trying not to smile too much. "You're more talented than you think." I felt heat rise in my neck. "It's not talent, it's just scribbles." Alyssa leaned forward, eyes locked on mine again. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make yourself small," she said. The words landed heavy. Because I did, all the time. It was easier to be the funny guy than the guy who wanted things. I tried to laugh it off. "I'm not making myself small. I'm 5'10". She rolled her eyes, but her smile stayed. "You know what I mean." I nodded, suddenly quiet. There was a pause, and the air changed again. Not awkward, just charged. Alyssa took a slow sip of her wine, then set the glass down. "I need to tell you something," she said. My stomach tightened. "Okay." Her eyes stayed steady, but her voice lowered, like she was saying it to herself as much as to me. "I haven't been on a real date in a long time." I didn't say anything. I didn't want to mess up the moment. She looked out the window for a second, then back at me. "After my divorce," she continued, "I decided work was easier. No surprises, no betrayal, no hoping someone would choose you and then watching them walk away." That last part hit harder than I expected. I stared at my plate, then forced myself to meet her eyes. "I'm sorry," I said. She nodded once. "I don't want your pity." "You don't have it," I said. "You have my respect." Alyssa's gaze held mine, and for a second, she didn't look like my boss at all. She looked like a woman who'd been strong for too long. Then she said, very quietly, "I shouldn't be here." My chest tightened. "Then why are you?" Her lips parted like she might back out, like she might put the walls back up and walk away. Instead, she said, "Because you make me feel light." I didn't move. I barely breathed. "And that scares me," she added. I swallowed, my heart pounding. "It scares me too." Her eyes softened at that. We finished dinner slower after that, like neither of us wanted the night to end, but both of us knew the rules. When the check came, I reached for it, but she slid her card down first. "My treat," she said. "I asked you out," I said. "Let me pay." "You took the risk," she said, and her voice was gentle but firm. "I can cover dinner." I didn't argue. Outside, the night air was cool, the streetlights making everything look softer than it really was. We stood by her car, and for a moment neither of us moved. "This was nice," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It really was." She looked at me like she was weighing something. Then she leaned in just a little, not enough to kiss me, but close enough that I could smell her perfume, something clean and warm. "We have to be careful," she said. "I know," I whispered. Her eyes held mine. "Do you still want to do this?" Quote. My throat went tight, but my answer came easy. "Yes." Alyssa's smile was small, but real. "Good," she said. "Because I don't think I want to stop." Then she opened her car door, paused, and looked back at me one last time. "See you Monday, Jared." And as she drove away, I stood there on the sidewalk with my heart racing, realizing I wasn't just in trouble, I was already in deep. Monday morning hit like a slap. Same Dallas traffic, same burnt coffee smell in the break room, same emails stacking up like they multiplied overnight. But I walked into the office feeling like I had a secret glowing under my skin. Alyssa was already there, standing near the conference room with a folder in her hands, giving instructions like she always did. Blazer, hair tied back, sharp, calm, untouchable. If I hadn't spent Saturday night watching her smile at me like I was someone worth letting in, I would have believed she was the same woman. She looked up for half a second when I passed, and her eyes met mine. No smile, no sign, just a flicker, quick and private, like a tiny spark hidden under a layer of ice. My chest tightened. I went straight to my desk and tried to act normal. I answered emails, fixed the printer, helped Travis find a missing invoice, and laughed at his stupid joke about the intern printing 200 copies of the wrong flyer. But my phone felt heavy in my pocket all day, like it was waiting. That night, right as I was eating leftover pizza on my couch, it buzzed. "Alyssa, you free?" My heart jumped so hard, I almost dropped my plate. "Me?" "Yeah, just me and a very sad slice of pepperoni. You okay?" "Alyssa, I'm fine. Long day. Send me something funny." I laughed, because of course she would ask that, like she wasn't a woman who ran an entire company and still somehow needed a cartoon to breathe. So I sent her a picture of a doodle I'd drawn years ago. A stick figure boss standing over a tiny employee with a speech bubble that said, "Let's circle back," while the employee's soul floated away. A minute later, my phone lit up with a voice note. It was her laugh, soft, real, not the controlled office version. It made my stomach flip and my chest feel warm all at once. "Alyssa, that is awful. I love it. Me, that's basically our whole job. Alyssa, don't get brave. Me, too late." I stared at the screen after I sent that, worried I'd pushed too far. Then she replied, "Alyssa, meet me Thursday, after work, not near the office." Me, where? Alyssa, I'll text you. And Jared? Me, yeah? Alyssa, don't tell anyone. Me, I won't. I meant it. Thursday night, she sent me an address to a small bar on the other side of town. A place that smelled like fried onions and old wood, with neon signs in the windows and a jukebox playing classic rock. The kind of spot nobody in our office would ever choose for a happy hour. Which was exactly the point. I walked in and spotted her in a corner booth. Alyssa was wearing a black sweater and jeans, hair down again, like she stepped out of her own life for a few hours. She looked up when she saw me, and something in her face softened immediately. "Good," she said as I slid into the booth. "You came." "Was I supposed to bail?" I asked. She gave me a look. "Don't get cocky." I grinned, and she rolled her eyes, but she didn't hide her smile. We ordered drinks. She went with a whiskey soda. I stuck with beer because I needed to keep my hands busy. For a while we talked like normal people. Movies. Music. The fact that Travis was convinced he could start a podcast and get famous in a month, Alyssa actually laughed at that, shaking her head like she couldn't believe the things she had to deal with. Then the conversation went quiet for a moment, and I could feel the shift. She stared into her glass like it held answers she didn't want to say out loud. "You ever think about how weird this is?" she asked finally. "All the time," I admitted. Alyssa's eyes lifted to mine. "I'm not supposed to do this." "I know," I said. "Neither am I." She let out a slow breath. "After my divorce, I promised myself I'd stop taking risks with people. Work doesn't leave you in the middle of the night. Work doesn't lie to your face and act like you're crazy for noticing." My jaw tightened. I hated that someone had made her feel like that, hated that she carried it like it was normal. "You're not crazy," I said quietly. Her eyes flickered, and for a second she looked like she might break. Then she straightened, like she caught herself. "I don't want this to be a mistake," she said. "It won't be." I replied too fast. Alyssa's eyebrow lifted. "You sure?" Quote. I swallowed, my heartbeat loud in my ears. "No, I'm not sure about anything. But I know how I feel when I'm with you." She didn't speak right away, like she was waiting for me to keep going, and I did. "I feel like you don't have to be the boss," I said. "Like you can breathe. And I like being the guy who makes that possible." Her gaze held mine, steady and intense. Then she looked away first, like she needed a second to regain control. "You're dangerous," she murmured, and I laughed once, nervous. "That's new." Alyssa's mouth twitched, not in a bad way. We sat there for hours, talking about our lives like we were peeling off layers. She told me she grew up in Austin, how she used to write little stories as a kid and thought she'd be an author. "I had a notebook full of characters," she said, shaking her head. "Then I got practical. College, marriage, career. Then suddenly I was 35, with no dreams left, just deadlines." I stared at her. "That's not true. You still have dreams. You just hid them." She looked at me like nobody had ever said that to her before. Then she asked about me, and for once I didn't brush it off with jokes. I told her about being the laid-back guy because it was easier than being the guy who cared. About my last relationship, how my ex said I didn't want enough. How I'd believed her for a long time. Alyssa listened without interrupting, her eyes on me like I mattered. And that was the problem. I was starting to need it. When we finally stepped outside, the night air was cool and the street was quiet. Alyssa walked beside me to her car, her steps slower than they needed to be. At the driver's door, she stopped and turned to me. "This is nice," she said softly, "but we have to be smart. No slip-ups." "I know," I said. She hesitated, then reached out and brushed my arm with her fingers. It wasn't a grab. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, but it felt like a promise. Then she got into her car. I stood there watching her pull away, my heart racing, feeling like I was balancing on the edge of something huge. The next week, we fell into a rhythm. By day, nothing. She was my boss. I was her employee. Professional, clean, careful. By night, we were two people who couldn't stop texting. Her, "Did you eat?" Me, "Yes, it was terrible." "I miss your fancy cafe salad." Her, "I had ramen." "Don't act like I'm classy." Me, "You are. You just hide it under spreadsheets." Her, "I'm ignoring you now." Me, "Liar." Then, one afternoon, we were in a brainstorming meeting. 10 people around the table, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, Alyssa at the head, like a general. I was pitching an idea, trying to be confident, and I cracked a joke. Without thinking, I said, "It's like that meme you sent me." The second the words left my mouth, my stomach dropped, because the room went still enough for me to feel it. Not silent, but close, like people smelled something off. Karen from finance glanced up. Travis's head snapped toward me. The creative director blinked like he was replaying what I said. Alyssa didn't react. Her face stayed calm, her pen moving like nothing happened. But her eyes flicked to mine for one sharp second. It wasn't anger, it was warning. She finished the meeting like a pro, dismissed everyone, and I stayed behind pretending to organize my notes, hoping I could disappear through the floor. Alyssa's voice cut through the empty room. "My office, now." I followed her down the hall, my pulse pounding like a drum. Her office was all glass and clean lines, Dallas skyline in the background. She shut the door and turned to face me, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "What was that?" she asked. I swallowed. It slipped. I wasn't thinking. "That's the problem," she said, voice low but controlled. "You have to think. Always." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "I messed up." Alyssa looked at me for a long moment, and the anger didn't come. Instead, she exhaled like she was tired. "I'm not mad," she said. "I'm scared." That hit harder than yelling would have. She stepped closer, keeping her voice low like the walls could listen. "If anyone suspects anything, it's not just gossip," she said. "It's my job, your job, everything." "I know," I said, throat tight. "I'll be careful, I swear." Her eyes searched mine, and I could see the truth under the control. She liked this too much. That was the danger. Then she surprised me. "Do you still want to see me tonight?" she asked. I blinked. After I just almost ruined everything? Alyssa's mouth twitched. "Yes, but we're going to talk, and you're going to stop being reckless." My heart thudded. "Yes," I said. "I want to see you." She nodded once, like she'd made a decision. "8," she said. "Same bar." And as I walked out of her office, my hands still shaking, I realized something. This wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a risk we were both choosing. And I didn't know what would happen if the world found out. But I knew I wasn't ready to let her go. 8 o'clock came too fast. I walked into that same bar on the other side of Dallas, and the first thing I saw was Alyssa in the corner booth, her shoulders slightly tense, her hands wrapped around a glass like it was the only thing keeping her steady. She looked up when I approached, and her eyes softened for a second before she tucked it away. I slid in across from her. "Hey." "Hey," she said back, quieter than usual. The jukebox was playing something slow. The air smelled like fried food and beer. People laughed at the bar like nothing heavy existed in the world. But in our booth, it felt like the whole room was holding its breath. "I'm sorry," I said right away. "About the meeting." Alyssa didn't answer immediately. She just stared at her drink, then finally looked up at me. "I'm not mad," she repeated, like she needed me to believe it. "I just can't afford a mistake, Jared." "I know," I said. "And I hate that I made you feel like you have to carry all of it alone." That did something to her. I could see the tiny crack in her calm. She took a slow sip, then set the glass down carefully. "You don't get it," she said, voice low. "I've spent years making sure no one can touch my life. After my divorce, I decided I'd rather be respected than hurt again. Work is easy. It's clean. People either do their job or they don't." Her eyes locked on mine. "But you," she continued, "you're not clean. You're real. You make jokes. You look at me like I'm a person and not a title." My chest tightened. "And that scares you," I said. Alyssa let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Yes, because I like it." I leaned forward, my voice gentle. "Then let's do it the smart way." Her eyebrow lifted. "You have a smart way?" "Barely," I said, and she actually smiled, small but real. I pulled my phone out and opened my calendar like I was about to schedule a dentist appointment. "Okay," I said, trying to keep it light. "Rules. We meet outside work. We don't text during office hours unless it's work. No inside jokes in meetings. No looking at each other like we're hiding a whole relationship." Alyssa watched me, her expression unreadable. "And we don't let Travis run his mouth," I added. That got a quiet laugh out of her. "Good," she said, "because if Travis finds out, he'll act like he invented romance." "I'm still not telling him," I said. Alyssa's face softened again, and she reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine for a brief second. Warm, steady. "Thank you," she said, "for taking this seriously." "I want you," I said before I could stop myself. The words hung there, simple and blunt and honest. Alyssa's eyes widened just slightly, like she wasn't used to someone saying what they meant. Then she nodded once. "I want you too." We didn't kiss in the bar. Not because we didn't want to, but because we both knew the world was too close. Too many eyes. Too many chances to ruin it. Instead, we talked. About her childhood in Austin. About my dumb cartoons. About how both of us had been hiding behind routines. Because routines never broke your heart. When we left, the night had cooled. The Dallas streets quieter. Streetlights reflecting off car windows like tiny moons. I walked her to her car again. At the driver's door, Alyssa turned and looked at me, and the look on her face wasn't boss, or professional, or careful. It was just her. "I don't do this," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "But I want to," she whispered. My breath caught. She stepped closer, her hand sliding up my arm, fingers gripping my sleeve, like she was making sure I was real. Then she kissed me. It wasn't wild. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow and steady, like she was finally letting herself take something she'd been denying for years. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine for a second. "You're going to ruin my perfectly controlled life," she murmured. I smiled, my voice low. "Good. It needs ruining." She laughed, quiet and real, then got into her car and drove away. And I stood there with my heart pounding, thinking about how a stupid dare turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. 2 weeks later, the first crack appeared. It started small. Travis caught me smiling at my phone in the break room and squinted like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You got a girlfriend," he said like it was a fact. "No, I lied too fast," Travis grinned. "That was the fastest lie I've ever heard." I shoved him lightly. "Eat your sandwich." But I could feel it, the pressure, the danger of being seen. That Friday, Alyssa texted me one word after work. "Tonight. No address, no explanation. Just tonight." I drove to the spot she sent next, a quiet overlook outside the city, where you could see Dallas spread out like a glittering map. I parked beside her car, and when I got out, she was already leaning against her door, hair down, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. I walked up carefully. "What's wrong?" Alyssa stared at the skyline, then finally spoke. "I got an offer," she said. My stomach dropped. "What kind of offer?" "A promotion," she said. "Senior director, New York office." The words hit hard. New York felt like another planet, bright and huge and far away from this secret little thing we'd been building. "That's huge," I said, trying to sound steady. "It is," she replied, "and I should be excited. I worked my whole life for opportunities like this." She looked at me then, her eyes shining with something she didn't want to show. "But if I go," she said, "I don't know what happens to us." I stepped closer. "Do you want to go?" Quote. Alyssa hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. She did, but she didn't want to say it and hurt me. I swallowed, my throat tight. "You should go," I said. Her eyes widened. "Jared." "No," I cut in, gentle but firm. "Listen, you're not going to stay here and shrink your life because of me. Not after everything you've told me. Not after how hard you fought to stand on your own again." Alyssa stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're okay with it?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not okay with missing you," I admitted, "but I'm okay with supporting you." I took her hands, feeling how cold her fingers were in the night air. "We'll figure it out," I said. "Weekend flights, calls, visits, whatever it takes." Alyssa's breath shook. "You'd do that?" she asked. I smiled, even though my chest hurt. "Alyssa, I asked my boss out because my coworkers dared me. I'm clearly not afraid of dumb risks." That made her laugh, and the laugh broke something open inside her. She stepped into me and held me tight, like she was afraid to let go. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered into my shoulder. "You won't," I said. "Not if you don't want to." We stayed there for a long time, holding each other under the Texas sky, the city lights glittering below, the wind brushing through her hair. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't a secret anymore. This was a choice. A week later, Alyssa accepted the New York offer. The office threw her a small goodbye party, and everyone acted like it was just business, like she was just moving on to a new job. Travis made a speech about how she was the scariest and most impressive boss he'd ever had, and Alyssa smiled politely, thanked everyone, and kept her eyes off me the entire time. But when the party ended and the office emptied out, she found me by the elevator. No one was around. The lights were dim. The building felt hollow. She stopped close enough that I could smell her perfume, clean and subtle. "I leave next Friday," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. Her eyes searched mine. "Say something funny." I swallowed, my heart pounding. "New York better be ready," I said. "Because you're about to run that whole city." Alyssa smiled, but her eyes were wet. Then she leaned in and kissed my cheek, quick and careful. "Don't forget me," she whispered. I met her gaze, steady. "Impossible." That night, back at my apartment, I opened my sketchbook. I flipped past the dumb cartoons, the coffee mugs, the screaming goats, and found a blank page. I started drawing her, not the boss version, not the polished version. The real Alyssa I'd seen in dim booths and late-night texts. The woman who laughed at my stupid doodles. The woman who finally let someone touch her heart again. And as I shaded in her eyes, I realized this wasn't the end of our story. It was the first time I'd ever wanted to fight for something long after the joke was over. Because the dare didn't matter. The risk didn't matter. All that mattered was her.